Hello, this is Jeff Barnes for ACMi News. A hybrid plan it's going to be. The town of Arlington will start the school year with a hybrid model following approval from the school committee Monday night, August the 10th. Now, the committee voted 6-1 to adopt a hybrid plan, assuming that COVID-19 cases in Arlington and the state remain within allowable levels. Now, for more information, all you have to do is go to arlington.k12.ma.us. Also, some sad news to report. Even more vandalism now in the town of Arlington. Arlington Police say they have responded to 4 incidents of malicious vandalism across Arlington aimed at Black Lives Matter signs. All 4 occurred on the morning of Monday, August the 10th, and originated at the First Parish Unitarian Universalist of Arlington, Cavalry Church, and 2 private residences in East Arlington. At the First Parish Unitarian Universalist, the Black Lives Matter banner was reportedly altered to read, "All Lives Matter." At the Cavalry Church, 2 Black Lives Matter signs and 1 mural were just destroyed. At one private residence, a KKK sticker was affixed to a Black Lives Matter lawn sign, and at another, the same KKK sticker was stuck to a "Hate Has No Home Here" lawn sign. In both cases, the sticker depicts a Klansman wearing a white robe and mask on a horse with a torch. Anyone with any information whatsoever is asked to call Arlington Police at this number, 781-643-1212.
From McLennan Park to Spy Pond, from Poets Corner to the Mystic River, we have Arlington covered. We're your neighbors, a friend you can turn to. This is ACMi News.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of ACMi News. I'm Jeff Barnes. In the fall of 2018, it was found that Lieutenant Rick Pedrini of the Arlington Police Department penned some pretty hostile comments about certain elements of our society. Town leaders then thought it best to have the lieutenant go through Arlington's restorative justice program, a program that the town has embraced in recent years. The lieutenant underwent and then completed the program back in 2019, and town leaders were satisfied he showed remorse for his actions. Lieutenant Pedrini still remains on Arlington's police force. Now, fast forward to May 5th of this year, when George Floyd was killed by a road cop in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That set off a nationwide fury that still exists to this day. And again, naturally, the Pedrini case has once again surfaced here in Arlington. So where does Arlington go from here? I spoke to Arlington Town Meeting member Greg Christiana, also a member of Envision Arlington Standing Committee, who is seeking to find some sort of common ground of information so that we may learn something about ourselves and maybe, just maybe, move forward. You came out with an article just a few days ago which prompted me to call you. We have the Lieutenant Pedrini problem going on in town, and I think it's kind of been exacerbated by what happened with the murder of George Floyd on May the 5th. And you want to come out with a series of articles which addresses many issues, among them police reform, and also how to get together where we can reach a solution to the case that we have currently in town with the lieutenant and maybe other issues. What is your end goal in doing this?
Yeah, great question. So I think the end goal, at least for me, and like my participation in this, is it's not just narrowly to, although this is like a big component of it, and why I got so engaged in this particular issue with Lieutenant Pedrini and his writings. It's not just an issue of like, that we need to have this process, bring it to a resolution, and it's over and done with. We can all move on with our lives, right? Because like clearly, like this kind of, I see this as like, especially like on a local level, like here in Arlington, like this issue with Lieutenant Pedrini's writings and what the town's response should be to those writings and to his employment with the APD and so on. I see that as like a pretty huge door for that we need to kind of like step into, so that we can kind of step into this much broader space where there's like much richer, deeper conversations to happen about policing and race and Arlington and how that plays out specifically in Arlington. Right, that it's not just something that's happening out there in the world. It's not just happening in Minneapolis. It's not just protests around the world and how we fit into that and what we do on Mass Ave with our own protests. That is a big component of it. But there's also a very kind of hyper-localized component, which is We have this officer on the police force who's in a leadership position within the department. He's written these terrible, awful, hateful things, and the town leadership saying, well, it's too hard to kind of to get rid of him from the force. And there's just a lot to dig into there about like, well, what are the actual, like, what's the menu of options that we actually have? Like, how did the decisions actually get made to get us to where we are now? And are there any of those decisions that we should revisit at this point? And what should we do going forward, right? And not just about Lieutenant Pedrini and his fate, but like, how do we restore a sense of kind of justice and safety to the community, right? And then only then can we really start the process of kind of building trust again between the community at large and the police department. And so we can't just jump to the end and say, okay, the situation's over and done with and move on, right? It's gonna be a long process that plays into these larger issues of race and policing in general and police reform, a lot of which, it's limited. There's stuff we should do, of course, at the local level, like within Arlington, but there's a lot of reform, like policy reform, that needs to happen at like the state or federal level. And so it's kind of like, we need like a full court press on all the dimensions of this really complex issue, right? And so I think with George Floyd, for instance, like you mentioned, with his killing, like that just kind of raised it like on a lot more folks' kind of consciousness than it was before, and really shifted things. Like a few years ago, Black Lives Matter was generally perceived as like a pretty controversial organization, and now it's like squarely in the mainstream and it has tremendous amount of public support, right? Like something has clearly shifted there, right? And we should use that. We should make use of that shift and that momentum, and also apply it to these local situations that are very specific to Arlington, like the Pedrini matter. So I think you need more perspective. You need lots of different avenues of coming at this problem. And this is like a more kind of informal, like grassroots sort of way.
Well, and that could be very constructive, and it starts from within, starts with the people. So I wish you nothing but the best of luck with this, Greg, because you have your work cut out for you, but it may yield marvelous things that we have not seen in a few years because of all the chatter, all the bickering. But now may be a good time, a pivotal point to start something like this, simply because of the events that have occurred this year. So Greg Christiana, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Very interesting to talk to you. And we hope to talk to you in the very near future, because obviously this is not going away tomorrow. This is going to be ongoing, and hopefully we can be very productive in the months ahead. So thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity.
No doubt, George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis 3 months ago was a pivotal moment in the ongoing struggle for racial equity. Many white Americans were appalled at such a horrifying betrayal of trust. Many black Americans, well, they've seen or heard about such treatment that goes back long before George Floyd was ever born. Upton Bell, a white man who lives just a few blocks from here in Cambridge, is the former general manager of the New England Patriots. And Harvard Stadium right here in Cambridge is where the Patriots played long before there was ever a Gillette Stadium. Before Bell was the youngest general manager in the NFL back then, he served as a scout for the NFL Colts, many times going to the Jim Crow South, to the African American colleges, looking for new talent in the midst of the turbulent 1960s. It's where Bell will tell you he quickly grew up, and 60 years later, he knows all too well that we have so much more work to do, not just in the South, but in the North, in cities like Cambridge, Boston, Chicago, and Minneapolis.
The right halfback, also living in Baltimore, number 24, the former Penn State star, Lenny Moore, and a threat to go the distance anytime he gets his hands on the ball. Moore is 6'1", 190 pounds.
The great thing about sports is it brings out onto the front page, on the television, our real problems in this country. The thing is that sports brings it to the forefront. We can see it there. There's no such thing as subtle racism as we see in regular life. I can remember leaving on a trip, the first trip, going through Virginia, the Shenandoah Valley, and then across into Tennessee, and up through the hills and the towns, and then over to Mississippi, into Alabama. I started out, I was 24, 25 years old. That's a kid. That's still a kid today. But the one thing that I do remember was, and it was either in Mississippi or Alabama, somebody said, well, asked me what I did, and I said, I'm a scout with the Colts, and the guy looks out the window and sees this huge Lincoln Continental, somebody called it Moby Dick. And he said, ain't no scouts around here that drive that damn thing. And I said, no, I really am a scout. And he said, yeah, you're 5 years removed from our last lynching. And I went like, really? I didn't say anything. But I thought, wow, this is reality.
But the whole trouble with this integration business is that in the end, it probably will end up with mixing socially. And you will have, well, I think their aim is mixed marriages and becoming equal with the whites.
It's what I would call the ultimate wake-up call. Now you're here.
I'm not for integration, I'm for segregation, and I will be until I die.
Mississippi is a state that has consistently resisted any move to rid itself of racism.
It was American apartheid. It was South Africa before South Africa. And you could drive through these little towns and the African-American community totally separate. And only would maybe come to town to go to the store, something out of a movie. To be a scout, you had to drive to these places. You couldn't fly into them. And you would see it. It was a separate world.
Go. West, west. Young guys, pay attention.
We're going to run straight at him.
I'm still going to Alabama with Bear Bryant there, and Mississippi with Johnny Vaught. But I kept saying to myself, I've seen some pretty good players, but they're not as good as the players I'm seeing at these African-American schools.
Good. I don't care who you are. I'm going to do it for one of them. Ready? Buck. Let's go, Buck. Good, Buck. Good, Buck. Good, Buck. Buck.
I never heard of Selma until I kept getting closer and closer to Selma because I was going to take it through and go on to Birmingham to the University of Alabama. I'd listen to radio reports. Well, Martin Luther King will be arriving and there's going to be a march across Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Be detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm saying that this is an unlawful assembly. You are to disperse. You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church.
And so, as I got closer to Selma, I stopped at a gas station. And I said, fill her up, whatever else is. And I wanted to go to the bathroom. And I get out and I looked over and it said whites. Now I knew this. It said whites and then it said blacks or the N-word. I emerge from it, get in my car, and I say to the guys pumping the gas, I said, geez, that's terrible. The two words that could have cost me my life. And he said, listen, I think he said something, listen, you son of a bitch. If you don't like it, he said, I'll go back in and I'll get my gun and blow your brains out. He wasn't kidding. And so I quickly said, thank you, sorry, and took off. I always had these, the thoughts about Jesus, one wrong move and I'm going to end up face down the Chattahoochee River somewhere. And that was always a real concern. I've seen history. I've seen history more than anybody. And I've seen history of race in America through the eyes of sports, but also the outside eyes.
We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
It's easy for us as white people to say this, but suppose I was Art Shell. Suppose I was Jerry Rice or Otis Taylor. How will I really even feel today? I made it. I'm happy I made it. But there is a difference.
Lenny Moore taking the handoff from the quarterback, John Unitas.
I can think of all of those great players. I knew a lot of them. And I said to myself, if I was sitting here today, would I be bitter? I think I might be.
Upton Bell is certainly one of a kind. He's a walking history book. All right, many businesses have already closed their doors, and several others are suffering financially in the midst of this novel coronavirus pandemic. Some are still barely hanging on and coming up with very creative ways to stay alive. One such business is the Regent Theater right here in Arlington. Its co-owner, Leland Stein, is calling on lawmakers to do something to get businesses like his through this major pandemic. The Regent Theater is 104 years old, and Leland says it's not so much the next 100 years he's worried about, but the next 100 days.
We were quite hopeful for some time with the phased reopening that when phase 3 kicked in, beginning of July, we'd be reopened with some capacity, reduced capacity, but with safe seating, and we're totally capable of doing that. But then when the governor announced that phase 3 was going to be in multiple steps, we were not included in step 1. And for step 1, the best we can do is have a maximum of 25 people and only show a movie. So that's roughly 5% of our capacity. So, and we can't do live shows, which we do, more often than film. So that isn't really helping us out much. We did, through our elected officials, our state reps, state senator, we have done our best lobbying effort along with people involved in the arts, entertainment, and cultural industry. The big sticking point was the parameters of allowing 8 people per 1,000 square feet, but then limiting it at 25 people. If that were carried through, the region has roughly 9,000 square feet. We could very safely have, say, 60 to 80 people between the 2 levels and do that very safely, and that's still less than 20% of our capacity. We would hope for that, but that's not going to happen.
I know a lot of people would love to help out. How can they help out? Where can they go? To your website, or can you give us your website? Put that up on the screen.
RegentTheater.com is definitely the best place to go. They can also like us on Facebook, which is Regent Theater Arlington. those are the best ways to keep up with what we're doing. And by the way, we are really set up well to do streaming events at the theater, and we are focusing on it, and we're able to do that in a robust way, multi-cameras, and really get it out there. But there's only so long we can go along and relying solely on those events. But just to let our audience know that we're trying to replicate as much as we can, but there's nothing like the community of doing in-person events, welcoming people into the venue from the stage, greeting them and thanking them as we leave. And we know people are yearning for that as well. So we're just hoping we get to that point sooner than later, and getting by with what we can do in the meantime.
Yeah, we look forward to your doors opening up. Much like Cal opened up the Pod Bay doors, everyone cannot wait for those doors to the Regent Theater.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Right. In the meantime, beam up to the Regent Theater at regenttheater.com, and we'll stream out to you, and we love to get people's feedback, and if they're able to donate, but also if they can't, because these are hard times for everyone, at least spread the word, share our GoFundMe campaign, and then I think we'll all be the better for it.
Leland, always a pleasure to talk to you, and love the Regent Theater. It's just a storied part of our history here in Arlington, and we know those doors are going to open up. Let's hope they open up sooner than later. Wish you the best of luck.
Yes, thanks so much for your time and your interest and your enthusiasm, Jess. Much appreciated.
Thanks a lot, Leland. All right, take care now. Well, about 6 weeks ago, we lost the giant in the ACMi family, but he has moved on to bigger and better things. Alessio Moralia garnered the coveted Hometown Media Award for Excellence in Programming for his AM Garden show that was produced right here in Arlington. The Hometown Media Award is a nationwide honor, coast to coast in the United States, bestowed on the best and the brightest in the arena of community media TV. Out of literally thousands of entries, only 150 award recipients are awarded this honor. Here now is a sample of Alessio's AM Garden show produced by ACMi. It begins with some relaxing and hauntingly beautiful music and ends on a rather refreshing and raw bluesy note. Some pretty impressive guitar licks you're about to hear.
Olya Music, O-L-Y-A music.com. Olya is yet another artist and stage name for me when I perform. It's olyamusic.com. On Facebook, you can find me by my first name. And for Dimitris?
Yes, my website is called Menex Music, M-E-N-E-X music.com. The same is my Facebook and all my social media, so it's going to be easy to find me.
No, just kidding.
Same over there is CS Konopka, Konopka, and that's all my social media, and that's my website. So.
Okay. Repeat again, and we put here.
Okay. It's
CS
KONOPKA.com.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
www. How'd you do that?
Huh? You see that?
How'd you do that?
Yeah, don't do that. Stop that.
You're gonna ruin
now
it.
You change. Now it's my side. Okay.
All right,
Get you all together. Guys.
Yeah.
See you in the next episode of AM Garden Show. It's your turn.
AM Garden Show. See you next time.
See you next time on AM Garden Show.
See you in the next episode of AM Garden Show.
They do better than me.
Alessio has since moved to Amsterdam. You know, right down the street, like a 8-minute drive tops. We wish him the very best. And Alessio, you are very, very missed at the ACMi family. We wish you nothing but the best of luck. Okay, now on to a personal note. This will be my last week with ACMi News. I'm going to be moving on to other opportunities that hopefully will be just as rewarding. In the stunningly rapid 2 years that I've been here, I learned so much about a business that I actually spent my entire adult life enjoying, but I had so much more to learn. Prior to coming to Arlington, I was the so-called on-air talent. I was either reporting from the field or sitting behind an anchor desk in cities like Portland, Maine, Boston, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. But it was here in Arlington where I had the chance to learn the technical aspect of television. The ACMi staff taught me how to use a television camera, edit, and perform several behind-the-camera duties. And amazingly, you're not going to believe this, but I didn't break a thing. Well, there was that one camera, but it never happened again, I think. I also want to thank you for inviting me into this charming and historic town. It is truly an honor to deliver news stories in a place where so many of its residents are engaged and active in their community. And finally, I want to thank all the wonderful people and truly dedicated staff members who I met at ACMi. All staff members at this community TV station are so very talented in their respective fields. Unlike corporate-owned local television stations that dictate to you what the important events and issues of the day are, the staff here at ACMi works passionately to give this vibrant town its true voice, reflecting the community ACMi actively serves. As many of you already know, ACMi is led by Station Director Norm McLeod, who in the summer of 2018 took a chance on bringing me up here to lead an already credible news operation. And I simply cannot thank Norm McLeod enough. I'm very blessed to have another opportunity elsewhere, but I am going to miss the joy of working with such knowledgeable, patient, and extremely creative ACMi colleagues. Thank you so very much, each and every one of you. Godspeed, Arlington. Have a good night.
You can always check out our latest segments and newscasts on the web at acmi.tv/news. And don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ACMi News. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You'll find us at youtube.com/ACMi News. If you have any news tips for us or wish to become a citizen journalist, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at news@acmi.tv or stop by ACMI Studio A at 85 Park Avenue.